Hello everyone, I'm back here with chapter 2 of The Agony of Eros by Byung-Chul Han. This one is called Being Able Not to Be Able. So let's get started. Achievement society is wholly dominated by the modal verb can. In contrast to disciplinary society, which issues prohibitions and deploys should. So basically, if you are pressured by can, like you can do this, that's supposed to be like motivating and pressuring in our society. Like you can be an influencer on social media and have that be your own job. Like you can work, harder and more time and, probably get promoted. Like it's kind of, like controlling people through sort of positive encouragement rather than like a more, I guess, authoritative, explicitly authoritative should. Like you should do this. People might be more inclined to say, well, or feel bad about that, or think that that's negative, where can is, it might seem like it's giving agency to the other person, but Han's arguing that it's really just a more, like a less explicit manipulation. After a certain point of productivity should reaches a limit. To increase productivity, it is replaced by can. The call for motivation, initiative, and projects exploit more effectively than whips and commands. And so when he says to increase productivity, it is replaced by can, this reminds me of Marx, who was sort of making a plea for the worker to the person who was owning the business and hiring the workers in order to try to convince them to lower the hours that they worked each day. Marx said that, or argued that basically a human being only has the capacity to work so much. They need to sleep, they need to eat, and if they are well rested, they will be better workers. So Marx was imposing a limit on how much a person can humanly work. So to transgress this limit, Han is saying that people need to be self-motivated to work themselves to death because basically their employer can't ethically do that. The call for motivation, initiative, and projects exploits more effectively than whips and commands. As an entrepreneur of the self, the achievement subject is free insofar as he or she is not subjugated to a commanding and exploiting other. So it's not your boss who's saying, you need to do this and this and this and this. It's the employer who is self-motivated and wants to do more for whatever reason, to like prove themselves and, like I said, to get a promotion, etc. So the approach to manipulation and control and abuse of power has shifted. However, the subject is still not really free because he or she now engages in self-exploitation and does this of his or her own free will. The exploiter is the exploited. The achievement subject is perpetrator and victim in one. Auto-exploitation proves much more efficient than allo-exploitation because it is accompanied by a feeling of liberty. This makes possible exploitation without domination. So basically, if you were up because you were passionate about your project and you are motivated or by fear or love, Han says that potentially you are exploiting yourself because you're not you're not treating yourself as an employer is legally commanded to do. Foucault observes that neoliberal Homo economicus does not inhabit disciplinary society. An entrepreneur of the self is no longer a disciplinary subject, but he fails to notice that this entrepreneur of the self is not truly free. Homo economicus only thinks himself free when in fact he is exploiting himself. So, do we think we're free when we can make, all the money that we need in a year by being our own boss and having our own business or having a YouTube channel that is monetized? Are we really free? Just because we don't have someone else telling us what to do, we are telling ourselves what to do. Foucault adopts a positive attitude toward neoliberalism. I just don't know if that's true. Uncritically, he assumes that the neoliberal regime, the system of the least state, or frugal government, which stands for the management of freedom, enables civil liberty. Foucault fails to notice the structure of violence and coercion underwriting the neoliberal dictum of freedom. I mean, maybe Foucault wouldn't have, articulated the malicious power that goes undetected in every institution in the same way. He might not have used the word neoliberal, but I thought that's exactly what he was talking about. Let me know if I'm wrong, and Han's right. Consequently, he interprets it as the freedom to be free. I'm going to produce what you need to be free. I am going to see to it that you are free to be free. The neoliberal dictum of freedom finds expression in the paradoxical imperative, be free. But this plunges the achievement subject into depression and exhaustion. Even though Foucault's ethics of the self stands opposed to political repression and allo-exploitation in general, it is blind to the violence of the freedom that underlies auto-exploitation. You can produces massive compulsion on which the achievement subject dashes himself or herself to pieces. So basically, we're working ourselves to death. Because it appears as freedom, self-generated compulsion is not recognized as such. You can exercise even greater constraint than you should. Auto-compulsion proves more fatal than allo-compulsion because there is no way to resist oneself. The neoliberal regime conceals its compulsive structure behind the seeming freedom of the single individual who no longer understands him or herself as a subject to, but as a project in the process of realizing itself. It's basically the message of capitalism and the current government that, no one has restrictions. If you want to be a millionaire or a billionaire, go ahead, you just have to work hard and put the effort. I think Kim Kardashian said something like this recently, and she got flack for it. She said that, okay, actually, I shouldn't say this because I'm probably going to misquote it. So scratch that. It's the message in society that if you aren't successful, it's your own fault. So work harder, be smarter, and so it puts the responsibility on the person instead of allowing, the line of questioning to be directed to how the economy is and the state is set up for people to fail. It doesn't recognize in a lot of studies, especially in diversity studies and studies on race and gender, class also have looked at how certain people who are born from a certain standpoint and positionality have actual restrictions and limitations. It's harder for them than it is someone who's born in a privileged family who, has their parents for loans and to buy their first house, and they have the know-how about investing. It sort of masks that not everyone is on equal footing when they come into this world. So saying that, well, it's your fault if you're not successful is sort of dishonest. That is its ruse. Now whoever fails is at fault and personally bears the guilt. No one else can be made responsible for a failure, nor is there any possibility for pardon, relief, or atonement. In this way, not only a crisis of debt occurs, a crisis of gratification does as well. So basically, if you can't make it in this world, you're not only punished by the fact that you can't pay your bills, you're also meant to feel ashamed and bad about yourself because you couldn't figure it out. And is that sort of a fair culture or society or way of life that humanity has set up? Relief from debt, financial and psychological, and gratification both presume the other. Lack of a binding, so I guess there's no other to blame in the current situation. Maybe that's what he's saying. Lack of a binding connection to the other is the transcendental connection for crises of gratification and debt. Such crises make it plain that capitalism, counter to widespread belief, for example, Benjamin, is not a religion. Every religion operates with both debt, guilt, and relief, pardon. But capitalism only works with debt and default. It offers no possibility for atonement, which would free the debtor from liability. The impossibility of mitigation and atonement also accounts for the achievement subject's depression. Together with burnout, depression represents an unredeemable failure of ability. That is, it amounts to psychic insolvency. Literally, insolvency, from the Latin solvere, signifies the impossibility of paying off a debt. Eros is a relationship to the other situated beyond achievement, performance, and ability. Being able not to be able represents its negative counterpart. The negativity of otherness, that is, the atopia of the other, which eludes all ability, is constitutive of erotic experience. The other bears alterity as an essence. And this is why we have sought this alterity in the absolutely original relationship of Eros, a relationship that is impossible to translate into powers. Absolutizing ability is precisely what annihilates the other. A successful relationship with the other finds expression as a kind of failure. Only by way of being able not to be able does the other appear. Quote, can this relationship with the other through Eros be characterized as a failure? Once again, the answer is yes, if one adopts the terminology of current descriptions, if one wants to characterize the erotic by grasping, possessing, or knowing. But there is nothing of all this, or the failure of all this, in Eros. If one could possess, grasp, and know the other, it would not be the other. Possessing, knowing, and grasping are synonyms of power. And that's why a lot of relationships are abusive, because one person is trying to grasp the other, who doesn't want to be grasped. One person is trying to know completely the other when that is impossible, and everyone has the right to retain information. Like if someone says, your body is my body now, that always doesn't get taken well, It doesn't matter who you're in relationship with, what the status of that relationship with is, or how long you've been in a relationship. Everyone has the right to continue to ask for consent. It should never be given. Today, love is being positivized into sexuality, and by the same token, subjected to a commandment to perform. Sex means achievement and performance, and sexiness represents capital to be increased. The body with its display value has become a commodity. At the same time, the other is being sexualized into an object for procuring arousal. Okay, that's interesting that he says that, because that was one of my sort of hesitancies or criticisms, if that's what Han was wanting, that the other is supposed to be unpossessed so that the other can arouse us. So I guess that's not what he's saying. So I'm glad I read that again. When otherness is stripped from the other, one cannot love, one can only consume. To this extent, the other is no longer a person. Instead, he or she has been fragmented into sexual part objects. There is no such thing as a sexual personality. When the other is perceived as a sexual object, primal distance erodes. Martin Buber claims that such distance serves as the very principle of being human and constitutes the transcendental condition for any alterity existing at all. Primal distantiation prevents the other from being reified into an object and it. So this is this lack of, I guess, primal distantiation that Buber says is the principle of being human, I think could be seen in comments in relationships with, such as when someone encounters, their significant other, and says, sort of with judgment or surprise or disdain, like, you've changed, or you're not the same person you were before, as if someone had to be consistent for somebody else, as if someone couldn't evolve or grow or take a new path, change their minds, change their feelings. Or if someone says to their partner, sorry, there's a bit of noise outside. If someone says to their partner, what's wrong? Like, you don't, like, you have a bad expression on your face. Like, maybe if someone was saying, like, hey, is anything wrong, in the way that, they want to help or something, but if it's kind of said in a judgmental way, like, you shouldn't have that expression, or why do you look that way? Why do you look ugly? Why do you look mad? Why do you look angry? Like, almost as if that's not allowed, or you don't deserve to have whatever emotions you want. When the other is perceived as a sexual object, primal distance erodes. Oh, sorry, I read that already. The other as sexual object is no longer a thou. It is impossible to have a relationship with it. Primal distance brings forth the transcendental dignity and propriety that frees, that is, distances, the other into his or her otherness. Precisely this is what makes it possible to address the other properly. One can call up or out to a sex object, but one cannot address it. A sex object has no countenance, which is what constitutes alterity. The otherness of the other commands distance. And I think that, this isn't anything necessarily new. I think basically, it just used to be called sexual objectification that dehumanizes someone else. But he's just saying it in a updated, much more elegant way, I think. Or is he saying something new? Let me know if you disagree. Today, more and more, dignity, decency, and propriety, matters of maintaining distance. Okay, so this is where I feel that Han is a neo-modern and not a post-modernist, because post-modern thinkers would question and be suspicious of any sort of universal value or standard or expectation that everyone should sort of submit to. It's kind of a totalizing narrative that says, you know, this is right and this is wrong, or this is what we should do. So words like dignity, decency, and propriety, I don't know, it's just sounding more like, I don't know, like Kantian reason and the Enlightenment than the sort of chaos and artistic creative expression of, you know, anything goes. And I mean, the postmodernist age is individualistic, and that's what he is sort of crying out against. Yeah, so that's just what this, you know, this line means to me, or makes me think of. Today, more and more dignity, but someone said, it might have been Eric Butler in a podcast I saw. He or someone else said that, you know, we have a problem if the only people that can talk about values and character are the conservatives or the right. Which is kind of a different way of saying it, but I think it might, you know, maybe counter what I just said. It's something, I guess, to think about. That is the ability to experience the other in terms of his or her otherness as being lost. By means of social media, we seek to bring the other as near as possible. And I think that he dwells so much on social media because he is of the thought that we are spending more and more time. That's how we are communicating. We are communicating more and more on social media instead of other ways. And when he says we seek to bring the other as near as possible, so to close that distance, the distance that we need for Eros, I think that can be seen in the expectation that someone should always pick up their phone or answer a text quickly, because who doesn't have their phone with them, right? So the fact that we have portable cell phones that we're always maybe looking at or working on or just having on our bodies, that means that we should always be available. And I think that some people put that pressure on themselves. They kind of feel bad if they don't want to answer the phone right that when someone calls. But the thing is that if you were out and about, or if you're doing something and the phone rings, you used to have to let it go to voicemail, and then you would get the message whenever you get it. But you are 24/7 connected to your phone. If you are, then there's never a time where you are distanced from your phone. But this does not mean that we have more of the other. Instead, we are making the other disappear, which I think is a really amazing paradox. Nearness is negative insofar as remoteness is inscribed within it. But now a total abolition of remoteness is underway. This does not produce nearness so much as it abolishes it. Instead of closeness, it entails crowding. Nearness acts negatively. Therefore, it is inhabited by tension. So it seems like he's saying, so the presence of tension, I guess, is an example of an element that allows the other distance even when physically close. I guess sort of Eros is incited and is created when I guess there's pause in an encounter, when you're trying to search out the expressions of the other person and their face, and you're just really aware of your difference. And that gets lost when I think we're on social media, and that's, I think, where the judgment and the criticism and the harsh comments sometimes that we find are kind of let loose because we don't even feel positioned and embodied. And we don't see the other person, or we think that the other person doesn't see us. And so it's kind of like we're shouting at ourselves. The power of negativity lies in the fact that things are enlivened precisely by their opposite. Mere positivity lacks any power to animate. Today, love is being positivized into a formula for enjoyment. Above all, love is supposed to generate pleasant feelings. It no longer represents plot, narration, or drama, only inconsequential emotion and arousal. So I think this is where he kind of like leads into the pornographic, that there's like no story. And the story is what is characterized by Eros. And I guess when he talks about positivity and enjoyment, I guess that is the relationship that we have with our tech. Our technology is supposed to work. It's supposed to just be there for us. We can open it and lounge and binge on Netflix or scroll Instagram Reels or chat with, on whatever apps we chat on. Our tech is there. Like, it's available to us whenever, 24/7. The internet's always on. And so it's really an appendage of our self, I guess. It is free from the negativity of injury, assault, or crashing. To fall in love would already be too negative. Yet it is precisely such negativity that constitutes love. Love is not a possibility, is not due to our initiative, is without reason. It invades and wounds us. See, I think first when I read almost anything of Han's, I was kind of struck by his insistence that there is no, basically it sounded like he was saying there's no conflict. We need relationships of injury, assault, and crashing. And so I think my hesitation or my resistance was that it seems like that's the difficulty of all relationships. What relationship doesn't have that? But I think maybe what I realize he might be trying to say is, and see, I don't think it's, I think he could do a better job when he uses words of clarifying and being super specific and being nuanced. But, you know, it's fine. The reader is forced to give him the benefit of the doubt and like make what he is saying correct. That's fine. I can do it. I think he's talking about injury and assault that strikes one and transforms one to make one think and reflect. It's an intimate kind of hurt that connects the person to someone else even more. Maybe. I don't know. Like, does that sound healthy though? I don't know. I'm trying, Han, to see your point. Achievement society, which is dominated by ability and where everything is possible and everything occurs as an initiative and project, has no access to love as something that wounds or incites passion. I mean, so it sounds like he's not just talking about relationships between people. It sounds like he's talking about relationships between the self and tech, and the self and jobs, and the self and society and culture. And so if we think about it that way, and he says that there's no injury, there's no assault, I guess that would be true. Like taking the example of trying to get monetized for YouTube. It's nothing but encouragement. It may feel like a punishment, but it's a punishment that drives content creators further to keep pushing. You know, for instance, when you look at YouTube Studio, you see what you have remaining in terms of watch hours and followers to get monetized. So there's never any punishment like, oh, you can't make any more videos on YouTube after a certain point if you don't achieve a particular status. You can keep making videos for as long as YouTube will exist and not be monetized, but there's not really a command. The algorithm is not even made public. You kind of have to guess at it and work for it to even understand what it is. So there's a lot of positive in the sense of presencing when it comes to the relationship to things like content creation. And I keep bringing that up because I think it's just an easy example. And also, I think the target of Han's criticisms are people who are on social media and producing content. I think that's pretty clear when he talks about selfies and algorithms and so on. The performance principle that dominates all spheres of life today also encompasses love and sexuality. Thus, the heroine of the best-selling novel 50 Shades of Grey is surprised when her partner construes their relationship as a job offer. It has set hours, a job description, and a rather harsh grievance procedure. The performance principle cannot accommodate the negativity of excess and transgression. Accordingly, the agreements the submissive pledges to observe include plenty of exercise, healthy meals, and ample rest. She is not allowed to eat anything other than fruit between meals. She must avoid immoderate consumption of alcohol and may not smoke or use drugs. Even sexuality bows to the commandment of health. Every form of negativity is prohibited. The list of forbidden activities includes using excrement as well. Even the negativity of real or symbolic dirt is eliminated. Okay, that's kind of shocking to me, I'm not gonna lie. Thus, the heroine signs on to keep herself clean and shaved and or waxed at all times. All right, maybe I just read 10 pages of this book because I don't remember any of this. The sadomasochistic practices the novel describes amount to nothing more than sexual diversions. They lack the negativity of overstepping, such as occurs in Georges Bataille's Erotics of Transgression, which I really want to read Bataille. Thus, the partners determine in advance that they will not exceed hard limits. So-called safe words guarantee that activities do not go beyond certain boundaries. I mean, isn't that a good thing? The overuse of the adjective delicious throughout the novel points, do I believe that, to the dictate of positivity, which transforms everything into a formula for enjoyment and consumption. So I guess he's trying to say that in order to have this sort of capitalistic, commodified, performance, achievement-based way of creating pleasure is to maximize and optimize it according to calculations and measurement and control, which Han says actually destroys pleasure. It's kind of, recently I came across this person named Bryan Johnson who has sort of donated his body in a sense to science. He measures his body, like his, I don't know, whatever you can measure, according to in order to understand your health status. He does that all the time. He says that, one should go to bed at 8:30 at night and wake up at 5:30, should sleep alone, only eat once a day, and that meal should be vegan and filled with fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And, there's a particular regimen of working out, I guess. I don't know. I didn't look at that, but I'm just assuming. And the goal is to see the optimal regime for human beings that can slow our aging and make us younger than we actually are. And so, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think that's tempting and kind of alluring, but he does get a lot of criticism. He was on Lex Friedman, I think that's his name, show, and Lex was saying, that doesn't sound like a pleasurable, happy life. And I think Han would probably agree that level of preoccupation and obsession on one's health, what does it cost? The benefit is youth and agelessness and maybe immortality to some extent. But, well, I guess immortality, it doesn't have an extent, but you know what I mean. I'm just hyperbole. But I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I feel as if people shouldn't criticize because maybe he seems really happy, and why not? I mean, I remember one time I was in a pizza parlor with some of my peers in graduate school, and I wasn't eating pizza, I was just eating a salad, and they said, why don't you have pizza, live a little. And it also reminds me of that line in Garden State where someone is saying to, I think his character name is Izzy, he's just telling Izzy, maybe it was Zach Braff, I don't remember. This is, Garden State was a while ago. My memory is hazy. Someone was telling Izzy what to do. And Izzy was saying, hey, don't, what was the line? It was such a good line. Don't judge my life because you're unhappy with yours. And, people need to just lay off each other, I think, and let people do what they want to do, because not everyone is super happy eating pizza, or, that was old me. Current me loves pizza, but, I didn't back then. I had other goals. I had other priorities. I had other values, which today are long gone. But, everyone's happiness, it might be different. So, I don't know. I wonder if I can uncharge this. I need to. It's getting dark. I need to turn on a lamp. Okay. Plugging the lamp in doesn't turn it on. All right, just a minute. I have to stretch. Yes. We have light. We have artificial light. Okay, so I don't know. Because Lex's point was sometimes, you have to fall asleep under your desk. I think that's the phrase he had in this interview with Bryan Johnson. He said sometimes the best nights, the greatest nights, are just chaos and giving it all up, like not keeping to schedules, not keeping to regimes, but actually, this is what's pulling my cord down. Okay. Just giving up everything, like not sleeping, not eating, living on Red Bull, to make the deadline and to get to, I don't know, to contribute to your career, I think maybe is where he was going. But, and then, I don't know, Bryan Johnson was like, I don't know, I crave my one meal a day. And I was thinking, well, of course, because you're like hella hungry as you're eating just in the morning, but whatever. He was like, I love what I eat every day. I eat the same thing every day, and I love this. I get excited, for what I'm doing. And yeah, I mean, maybe he does get excited because he's figuring out what maybe needs to be figured out. Like, what are the exact supplements? What are the exact nutrients that you need every single day that will optimize your body? So I don't know. I mean, I think, would we want to be in a world where Bryan Johnson didn't exist and wasn't doing what he was doing? I mean, I just think people should be careful what they wish for and what they're asking. Sorry, I think it's exciting. Okay, so are we going to get past 50 Shades of Grey anytime soon? So-called safe words. Okay, Delicious. We read that. Sorry, it makes me giggle. Kind of hilarious. It was such a badly written book, I just have to say. And I'm not saying that to be like pretentious or something. Like, it was just, I don't know, it's just one of those books that surprised you that it ever got published. But apparently it was a good story, so, because it got turned into a movie. Everything into formula. Okay, even torture can be delicious in 50 Shades of Grey. Oh my gosh. The world of positivity admits only things that can be consumed. Pain itself is supposed to be enjoyable. Here, negativity, which manifests itself as pain in Hegel, no longer exists at all. All right, what does Hegel say about pain? Okay, well, it would have been nice to have a footnote to know what, but I guess I'll just go read all of his works and see where he talks about pain. I don't know, I haven't read Phenomenology of Spirit, but I have read Philosophy of Mind. I know he talks about the master-slave narrative in there. So maybe he also talks about pain in there, and maybe I know. Okay, the present that stands at one's disposal is the temporality of the same. In contrast, the future lies open to the event, which is absolutely surprising. Our relationship to futurity concerns the atopic other, which cannot be assimilated into the language of the same. Today, the future is shedding the negativity of the other and positivizing itself into an optimized present that excludes all disaster. So, I mean, he has other books that talk about, I think there's one book about health. Do I have that book? I can't remember. It was called like Palliative Society. I feel like I had some anxiety about what that book might be about. I don't know, I have to look on my bookcase. And if not, I have to get it. So he has this idea that we are, like, the pandemic showed that we're so obsessed with survival that we are giving up life. We're so obsessed with being healthy and being clean and sterilizing our world that we're restricting ourselves a lot from life. I can just very much see, I don't know if Byung-Chul Han is married or in a relationship, but I can just very much see the kind of partner that he would want. And the musealization of what has been is destroying the past. As a repeatable present, this museum, casts off the negativity of the irretrievable. Memory is not an organ of simple restitution by means of which one makes the past present again. In memory, what has been is constantly changing. It is a progressive living narrative process. And I guess that's true, because when we think about the past at different times in our lives, we sort of revise it and see it differently and interpret it differently. So it becomes, the meaning changes. In this, it differs from data storage. Technological data storage strips all life from what has been. It is without time. Thus, a total present prevails today. It is abolishing the irretrievable moment. Time without moments is merely additive and no longer situative. As the temporality of the click, it lacks decision and resolve. The blink of an eye is yielding to pointing and clicking. So that's interesting. So I wonder if technology is changing our ability to remember in a revisionary way. I don't know, because I guess even if I have a photo album, a digital photo album on Instagram of pictures, can't I still interpret those photos in new ways? Even if I go back to my Twitter history and look at what I wrote down in December, won't I contextualize that in my mind? And the context is something that can't be, as of now, recorded. Can't I revise the context, the memory of the context of when I wrote that and why I wrote that? So what Han says may be where we're heading, and that may be possible in the future. But I don't think data storage does that yet. I realize it's different, though, than, say, the time before written record, when not many people were literate and there was no printing press, and people were passing off stories through oral tradition, and so those stories were constantly, rapidly changing. And, after the printing press and the Industrial Revolution, you have a book that doesn't necessarily change. But at the same time, when you're talking about that book, you're changing it a little by your interpretation. And a lot of people read books more than once and see something new every time. You can go back to a book 2 years later and understand it in a different way, or just understand it for the first time. And you will layer your experiences onto that book. Even though the book seems static, your relationship to it and your consumption of it. I hate to use that word because Han's like hating that word, or the concept. But what am I trying to say? I mean, it's probably not the best word. Yeah, I guess your relationship to a static book changes. So is the book really static? Erotic desire is tied to a particular absence of the other, not the absence of nothingness, but rather absence in a horizon of the future. The future is the time of the other. Totalization of the present as the time of the same. I still want him to explain the same. Eliminates the absence that otherwise makes the other unattainable. Levinas interprets the caress and pleasure as figures of erotic desire. The negativity of absence is essential to both. The caress is a game with something slipping away. It reaches for what is vanishing into the future without end. Its desire is nourished by what doesn't yet exist. The absence of the other in the midst of shared sensuality is also what constitutes the depth and intensity of pleasure. Today, love, which now means nothing more than need, satisfaction, and enjoyment. So that kind of sounds to me, if we are demanding that our needs are met, that we are satisfied, and we enjoy the relationship, that's kind of controlling the other as if we were entitled for the other to provide that for us. But at the same time, it sounds like what Han is talking about is the teasing and the flirtation that happens when the relationship is not yet official. And I do think people are quite aware that that is an exciting time, that any kind of taboo or forbidden element, and oh, sorry, I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking about like Ross and whatever character Reese Witherspoon played in Friends. And they're like, I don't know, they were just hilarious. They kind of talked about this too. I think people are quite aware that that is sort of a sexually charged time. And I think that it's problematic if people are getting bored in relationships and breaking up because they want to go back to the excitement of the new or the excitement of the forbidden. You know, something or someone that you always have access to is maybe less desirable to the person with that kind of mindset. So is Han suggesting that we always have distance and we always have mystery in our relationships? That we always have teasing and flirtations and something that is forbidden in relationships to make them erotic? I mean, maybe that might be what, you know, life coaches and therapists suggest, or what is it called? Marriage counselors suggest. And I mean, I agree. If that's possible, then that sounds good. But that also just sounds like a lot of work for couples who have like children and work and have to clean their houses and things like that. I don't know. What is Han asking? He's like a single dude that, I don't know, probably doesn't have kids. I mean, I don't either, but I'm just saying, I don't know if that's possible. At certain, I don't know, maybe it is. So we are on the last page. We can do it. We have 7 minutes. 6 minutes. It reaches for what is vanishing into the future without end. Its desire is nourished by what doesn't exist yet. The absence of the other in the midst of shared sensuality is also what constitutes the depth and intensity of pleasure. Okay, here we go. So, sort of referring back to Badiou, who is talking about symmetry. He's talking about symmetry here. He says, in the midst of shared sensuality is a good thing. Today, love, which now means nothing more than need, satisfaction, and enjoyment, we're way past that, is incompatible with the withdrawal and delay of the other. Society as a search engine, a machine for consumption, is abolishing the desire for what is absent, what cannot be found, seized, and consumed. I mean, I'm going to say maybe he wrote this before Google started censoring information, because you can go on Google and you can be very frustrated from what it is withholding to you. And I'm not trying to incite a conspiracy theory, but I'm saying that you will realize that what I say is true when you try to find something that you shouldn't be searching for and you can't find it, and 10 years ago you really have a feeling that you could have found it. You could have found anything. So I'm not going to be more specific. I'm just saying. All right, where are we? Yet Eros awakens only in view of the countenance that at once gives and conceals the other. The countenance stands diametrically opposed to the face that holds no secrets. Sorry, I can't see through my weird reddish brown highlights, which exhibits itself in pornographic nakedness and hands itself over to total visibility and consumption. Although Levinas does not glimpse the erotic abysses that find expression as excess and madness, his ethics of Eros points unambiguously to the negativity of the other. Sacrosanct atopic otherness, which in today's increasingly narcissistic society is vanishing. Moreover, Levinas's ethics of Eros can be reformulated as resistance to the economic reification of the other. Otherness is not consumable difference. Capitalism is eliminating otherness wholesale in order to subordinate everything to consumption. Eros, however, represents an asymmetrical relationship. Okay, so it is asymmetrical. But you can have shared sensuality. Okay, I don't know, but right here it says Eros, however, represents an asymmetrical relationship to the other. As such, it interrupts the exchange rate. Otherness admits no bookkeeping. So no pros and cons lists for your significant other. It does not appear in the balance of debt and credit. So, I mean, that's good advice. You know, I think saying that someone owes someone else something is probably not the most erotic thing. But why is it asymmetrical? Is what I want to know. Why is this has to be asymmetrical? Maybe it's sort of asymmetrical in the sense that what is given and what is withheld is always shifting. So in a way, it is reciprocal, or it is balanced, or it is equal, because people are shifting in their roles. It's not one person that's always the other. It's that someone is sometimes the subject, but also sometimes the other, or I guess the other would be better than saying the object. So those reference points are shifting. Yeah, I think so. I like that. Okay, so thank you so much. I have to talk about this book tomorrow, and I just don't want to read it by myself, but maybe I have to. Thank you so much. I don't know what my next video will be about, but I hope to see you there.